This chapter introduces us to how local ideologies influences language learning. It focuses on how heritage Spanish speakers in North Philadelphia use and value Spanish and English in their spoken and written form. The author argues that if teachers understand students' beliefs about how they use and value language in their daily lives, they have a well-founded starting point to encourage and expand students' bilingualism and biliteracy. The chapter explores the daily life of Claudia and Silvia, two Puerto Rican students. Both students' parents emigrated from Puerto Rico in search of a better life. Claudia was born and raised in North Philadelphia. Silvia was born in the United States, but soon her parents moved back to Puerto Rico. After 1 year, her parents moved back to the United States. Claudia's family provided a primarily English education because her father suffered and struggled to learn English. The father not only gave Claudia an only English education, but also spoke just English at home. The mother did not agree, but they compromised to introduce Spanish once English was learned as Claudia's first language. Silvia's parents provided a bilingual education throughout her elementary and middle school years. However, in high school her education turned to be all in English, and the only Spanish she used was with her family. Claudia went through a period of time that she could not communicate with her family. Family reunions were a nightmare, where her cousins made fun of her asking, "What are you, an American or Puerto Rican?" Family members also gave a hard time to Claudia's mother because she could not understand what they were saying. Claudia felt out of place, and soon her mother enrolled her in a bilingual school. Claudia learned and improved her Spanish, but she got an accent. When traveling to Puerto Rico for her first time, Claudia encountered another problem. The Spanish that was spoken in the island was completely different from the Spanish she learned in North Philadelphia. The Puerto Rican found her Spanish was broken. They did not see Claudia as a Puerto Riqueña. All these experiences brought an identity issue for Claudia. However, she defined herself as an American with Puerto Rican blood. In Silvia's house, the main language they spoke was Spanish. The TV was always turned in the Spanish channels. Her parents only spoke Spanish. Silvia's family characterized by moving a lot. This had a negative effect on Silvia's school performance, making her repeat 10th grade. Silvia developed an amazing ability to translate orally and written materials. She became the mediator or translator of her family. However, teachers did not see this skill because they are not allowed to use it at school. Now let's look at some of the implicit beliefs that we can see in Claudia's story. Claudia's education was decided based on a series of assumptions and beliefs about how Spanish and English should be instructed. First, there is an assumption that language is learning in sequence. When we say first language, meaning that we have to learn one language first and then we can learn a second one. This actually, in many cases, does not represent truthfully the language acquisition process. Also, this first language, if you grow in the United States, it is assumed that should be English. Second, Claudia's family stress in learning English suggests that English has more educational, economic, and cultural value than Spanish. In other words, English is more powerful. We can see this English domination by analyzing classes of language. She speaks Spanish for her private life, with her family, friends, church, and English for her public life, like at school, for example. Another common and misinformed assumption is that Claudia's father believes that learning Spanish will interfere with Claudia's ability to learn English. In contrast, we know from the common underlying proficiency model that in spite of the language the person is using, the process behind language production comes from the same cognitive functioning ability. Claudia and Sylvia's stories cannot be generalized for everybody that speaks Spanish. Having said that, it is worth it for educators to take into consideration these Puerto Rican linguistic experiences and consider their language capability to build on their heritage language. Let's take a look to Claudia and Sylvia's strengths. Both Claudia and Sylvia developed interpersonal skills of communication in Spanish. Claudia's expertise in speaking and understanding Spanish was limited to Spanish speakers in North Philadelphia because she has not been exposed to other types of Spanish. On the other hand, Sylvia's expertise in speaking and understanding Spanish involved not just Spanish speakers from North Philadelphia, but also from the island. Claudia started to learn Spanish as a social need to be able to communicate with her family members. On the contrary, Sylvia learned to read and write in Spanish from a bilingual educational program. We know that Claudia is good at telling stories in English. The teacher could start by having informal oral conversations in Spanish about a familiar topic for Claudia. Later on, the teacher could provide opportunities to read, write, listen, and speak about this topic in different ways. To better understand how educators can help bilingual students to develop biliteracy, let's take a look at Hornberger and Skilton-Sylvester framework of the continua of biliteracy. They proposed that there are three intersecting continua. One continuum is the receptive, that's how students understand, and productive, which is oral or written. The other continuum is oral and written production of language, and the last continuum is the languages. Hornberger and Skilton hold that one end of each continuum has more power than the other.
The society where these girls grew up values more productive, written, and English language than receptive or and Spanish language. This was really a wake-up call for us, because without realizing it, we, educators, demand and value more speech production, written language, and use of English from our students. I encourage you to focus your observations using this framework to plan your instruction in a balanced manner to promote as much as we can biliteracy in our students. Let's go back to Claudia. She's a perfect example of the power imbalance of language in her community. She's strong in English production, particularly with writing, and weak in all areas in Spanish. Claudia was able to communicate orally among the Spanish community. However, she was not able to write in Spanish her story. And this picture is a clear representation of this power imbalance.